session will be moderated by Amit Gujral, Chief Marketing Officer of JK Tyre and Industry. Joining him will be Deepa Bhatia, General Manager of YouGov India, Meera Krishnan, Principal, Dua Consulting, Moona Jain, Chief Revenue Officer, ABP Network, Susan Josi, Managing Partner, Havas Live Sorento, Vaishali Sharma, Head Marketing and Communication, Sony Sub and Sony Max Hindi Movie Cluster, Sony Picture Network India. Sir, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for a coveted introduction. Thank you so very much. I hope I'm audible here.
Yeah, you're audible, Amit.
Yes, sir.
Great. It's truly my great honor to be here today on the eve of the, you call it Disruptor, I call them Achiever Awards. And truly, as a man, this is a celebration of the uniqueness, I think, for every woman leader out there who embodies infinite possibilities in her. So I think, first of all, we all can applaud for the ladies out all there. I'm not hearing the applause at all. See, I've had the privilege to work with many of such fierce, bold, and confident ladies. And it's an absolute joy to have an opportunity like this. Are we getting the YouGov team to present something, or how about it?
Hi, Amit. Yes, happy to. Just let me share my screen.
Yeah, please, Deepa.
Hope all of you can see the screen. And thank you so much for having me here on this very interesting topic to really try and understand how the past year and the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of us. I mean, it affected all of us despite gender, but has it had any special or unique effects on women, especially women who work in Marcom? And to try and understand that, we tried to do a collaboration with Adgully, where we ran a few survey questions to really try and understand what was the impact women were feeling. And Adgully collaborated with us on it. Before I get into the results, I just wanted to share a little bit about YouGov. We are an international research and consumer insights firm with offices in over 36 countries and panel today in almost 55 odd countries. Our panel is now large and global. These numbers, I'm sorry, are old. It's about 11 million now across the globe, and in India about 200,000. A very quick methodology note. We did this earlier with, like I mentioned, in collaboration with Adgully, where we tried to reach out to women who were working specifically in the marketing and communication fields. They worked across different experience levels, as well as at different kinds of companies, all the way from agencies, professionals, in-house corporate communication, consultancies, marketers, independent freelance practitioners, but all of them within the same industry, to try and understand what they felt were the impact on them over the past 1 year. And over to the findings. And what we saw was that professional challenges were obviously the most significant, as the pandemic brought a lot of disruption to our lives. And we see that professional challenges tend to overweight the personal challenges here. But in the overall challenges, what we saw was with working women, they got a double whammy. They ended up having both facing an increase in professional workload as well as an increased amount of household related responsibilities as they went into work from home. And so they felt a little bit squeezed on both ends of the spectrum. That doesn't mean that the last year was a complete washout. They did use this time, hopefully saved from all the commuting, to try and do more things and other things that they would do. Of course, it led to a lot more bonding with friends and family. Women overall appreciated the flexibility the work schedule now provided, now that they went into work from home. and they were able to dedicate a little bit more time towards health and wellness, apart from even other things like picking up a hobby or even upskilling their skill set. The kind of coping mechanism that they employed while trying to sort of navigate this new normal and figure out how to achieve that work-life balance when all of life was now within the confines of the home. And what we see is that digital mediums come to the forefront. We weren't only using them for professional reach outs, but we were also using digital means to also connect and talk to our friends and families much more often. We were watching a lot more content, of course, while we were also focusing a lot more on health and wellness, while spending a fair amount of time doing household chores and trying to de-stress while pursuing new hobbies. Before I go into the next section, I wanted to actually share some data from another survey that we recently did, and we are launching this survey on 8th of March to mark Women's Day. We were just trying to understand at YouGov, because we have so many panels, to understand what are the sort of opinions and attitudes towards gender equality. And what we see is that geographically, these are very, very different in all different kinds of countries. What we see is that more developed European markets, so to speak, tend to have a smaller gap, if you can see this, between men and women. So we see all of them on a net score, how much of agreement do they have towards certain gender equality statements. And the gap, say, between Spain is far, far more narrower than, let's say, China. And if you can see my screen, India, the gap is still fairly wide. And if you see, we actually are in that bucket with other Southeast Asian countries as well. And what we do see is that our Eastern neighbors, us included, do still have a fair amount of room to go and to scale towards getting to that gender equality. So what led to these differences? We wanted to get into some of those statements where we saw significant differences between men and women in India. So for example, a wife's first role is to look after the husband. 63% of Indian men tended to agree with this, vis-a-vis 50% of women. I see a few smiles coming on. A woman's place is in the home. 39% of men agree to that statement. In the world as a whole, women are an oppressed group. Both genders overall overwhelmingly agreed with this statement, which means both the men and the women do feel that women as a group are still oppressed or have some amount of room to go through. It is unattractive for women to express strong opinions in public. 41% of Indian men tended to agree with that statement. And this is just to show that there is still some room to get there. I don't think any country is necessarily extremely equal. We don't see any country with very, almost 50% kind of differences. But yes, as India and as other Eastern neighbors, we have some room to grow here and to see, and hopefully we will see that change over the coming years. Sorry, I'm unable to go ahead for some reason. One sec. And I did that segue to kind of come back to the gender equality gap. We also asked women if they felt the pandemic had any sort of impact on that. Most of us tended to feel that it did not necessarily have any impact, although 33% felt it widened the gender equality gap at work. Most people tended to feel it did not really affect it either way. Did they, though, as women, feel personally supported during the pandemic by the organizations? And it's quite heartening to see that most of the women really felt supported to quite a great extent by the companies they worked in. And they felt that that was well done. Did they feel working from home was going to become a bit of a permanent solution? And they did believe that. Women across the board did feel that working from home would end up becoming a permanent phenomenon going forward, though not for everyone. They were cognizant of the fact that this may not apply to everybody in society and that a few of the people would need to go back into work as before. We also tried to delve a little bit into what they felt as about leadership and women in leadership. And what we saw was that an overwhelming majority it strongly agreed that women make better leaders than men, especially during a crisis. And it kind of correlates to what they felt was the leadership skills of women. And what we see is it's both multitasking abilities, but also displaying empathy towards each other. And that was definitely, I think, empathy was one of the number one skill required during that last uncertain year, when where all of us gravitated towards leaders who were able to make us feel a little bit more reassured about what was happening around us. And so, in just summary, I wanted to just mention it's essentially what we see is that a double whammy was experienced, especially by women in Marcom, since they tend to be working women. They face both an increased workload as well as more household responsibilities. Women tended to really appreciate the flexibility that came along with COVID-19 pandemic, and I hope that that becomes something that they are able to enjoy going forward. And I think because of that flexibility, a lot of women also agreed that work from home would probably become a permanent phenomenon for the work in the future. And a large majority of professionals believe women make better leaders than men during a crisis. I also do think this has got to do with the fact that marketing and communication industries tend to give us a lot more many role models and women in leadership positions that allow women to experience those empathetic leaders and see them in leadership positions. And I think that's why the overwhelming majority agreed with the statement that women make better leaders than men. That's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deepa, for sharing the wonderful insights. And just to make a slight more involvement here of all the wonderful, cheerful ladies around me, any guesses what percentage of women in India make it to the Corpcom and Marcom kind of professions, or who are accepted in the leadership roles in various organizations? What percentage?
11
compared,
to
compared to women in any other walks of life?
11.
Any guesses? Any guesses? Yeah, Mona, you were saying something.
I thought 11 to 17%. I don't know. I'm just making a guess.
Come on, yaar, please improve yourself.
Maybe a
Be
third, 30%, you think?
I was thinking about 25% maybe, because it's
between 20 to 30%, I would say.
It's a phenomenal feeling when I express the number here. It's 34%.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
And really, I'm telling you, it really feels very, very proud and happy that 34% is the percentage which is against mere 14% of all women across all walks of life as a professionals.
Wow.
So brilliant. Lovely. I thought I can make somewhat this thing happy to start with.
Yeah.
Super. So once again, Deepa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think the findings have been sort of thought-provoking, and I think they are certainly worth discussing with, especially having some eminent women's personalities I have here with me today. So once again, welcome Mona, Meera, Vaishali, Suzanne, Deepa, all of you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm sure you are eager to really dwell further on these insights. So let me begin with, say, Vaishali. So Vaishali, how do you see that corporate culture has become more equitable and led to appreciation of the leadership style of women?
So that's an extremely interesting question, Amit. And, I think I'm just going to take a little bit a larger backdrop from across the world. So pandemic actually saw a very interesting thing emerge, which was countries with women leaders seem to have arrested the decline of the COVID crisis, like New Zealand and, even in a few other countries. So what happened during the pandemic is, I think, the appreciation of women as leaders. I think there was a higher appreciation, because at this time of uncertainty and during this time of unsurety and a lot of stress and not knowing how things were going to pan out, I think a lot of women leaders were able to rise up to the occasion and sort of use their softer skills to motivate, to hold hand, to kind of, aid the process of working in an environment which was really stressful. And some of a lot of surveys which have been done, actually a few aspects that were really appreciated about women leaders were they inspired, they motivate, they communicated powerfully. Because at this time when all of us were on teams, I think that the communication aspect was really crucial from a women leader, and collaborating, relationship building, so empathy. These were the qualities I felt that women leaders were able to demonstrate. So normally, if you look at whether it is world leadership or corporate culture, one of the things that has emerged across the world and even in our country is the aggression of being a leader, which comes from that whole male boardroom kind of male boardroom kind of influence, which goes down into corporate companies as well. But I think there is a talk everywhere about how leadership need not be actually, sort of aggressive, but how can leadership go beyond gender roles and actually can sort of, focus on more welfare and more empathy and more motivational skills rather than, sort of more aggressive and more sort of. So I think the pandemic really has taught us a lot in this regard. So that would be my, that would be my submission, that I think there's been a lot of appreciation of the skills that women bring to the table as leaders, especially during this time where they did not let work hold back, but they were there from a very empathy and humanistic perspective to be able to provide, what their companies or their teams needed. So back to you, Amit.
No, certainly. Appreciation has always been there. It's all about realization. And I'm happy to hear from you, Vaishali, that pandemic has made you think that it's become more empathetic. Lovely. I think I would love to hear Mona on the same thing.
I think Vaishali's kind of almost kind of covered up, lots of stuff that, I just wanted to add on with some statistics that I had with me, it probably can resonates, and kind of, validates what Vaishali just shared with all of us. So definitely speaking, the corporate culture has evolved, over this particular year, and women leaders are, equally kind of being looked at, and been recognized. And especially, the way they've been able to balance, this entire COVID impact that they had, where they had to kind of, straddle between work and, and corporate life, I mean, there was no escape actually kind of, delivering on, job expectations, and plus also being able to kind of, really work and do the regular household chores. But one of these studies that I was kind of looking at, and probably that also resonates with what kind of, Deepa shared earlier with her research. I think her research was very bang on and very, very practical. One could relate to every insight that she kind of shared in the beginning. Is the research I just was going through squats and Qualtrics, which says that 37% of adults, who were spoken, which is kind of including male and female, globally kind of felt, that the corporate culture actually had improved. And exactly what Vaishali said, the compassion and the empathy level of people has really kind of come about very, very clearly, and I think that's a good, impact, or a positive impact of COVID is brought about, in the corporate culture also, and probably for women also at the work front and at a home front. So that's what I really would like to kind of add, here.
Well, thank you. I can name two women who really made the headlines, if we say so, that in the pandemic time or is over or still prevailing. I would like to draw your attention on to Dr. Swati Mohan. I'm sure you have heard about her in the recent times.
Yep.
She is spearheading the development of altitude control and the landing system of Perseverance rover on the surface of Mars. Phenomenal thing to know about a lady, and that too from an Indian origin. Superb. Have you heard about Sikho Hashimoto? Anybody out there who has read about Sikho Hashimoto?
Yes, I did. I have heard about her. Just read about her a few days ago.
What a fate. Look at her leadership skills and how the government of Japan has endorsed her to be a head of Tokyo Olympics 2021. I think it's a huge fate for a woman to really announce to the world that she's going to head the Olympics 2021. Phenomenal, don't you think so?
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially in a country like Japan. Just recently they
Absolutely.
were in the news for the wrong things, but I think they resisted women leaders.
Right.
And
Now
also,
let me come to a very everlasting conversation. That is work-life balance for professional. We have been talking about. I mean, we saw in the YouGov research also something being touched upon the work-life balance. So, Meera, what would you say on the coping mechanisms to achieve work-life balance by women in Marcom, especially when all of us are working from home, which has become a new normal.
You're on the mute.
Meera, you are on mute.
Is that, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. So essentially, I will relate this work-life balance and the challenge that it poses specific to the COVID time. Um, this is something because I think I heard a lot of women say that the work life continued and overflowed and occupied all of their days, and there was, and in the face of an increasing work that required to be done at home, it was a huge challenge. But when also I personally experienced, and I also heard other people share the same thing, that technology was a bit of a game changer in this, in helping them cope, in the sense that it also helped them collaborate better with their colleagues and teammates, so across geographies, across the world if required, so that they're able to delegate and work in a more collaborative fashion, so that the the demands on their time are definitely more better rationalized. Second is, I think, as the COVID situation or work from home progress, people, women particularly, learn to say no and do a pushback when there were unreasonable demands on their working time. If somebody unexpectedly pinged in at 8 o'clock or at night, or expected you to respond at ASAP, those were things that I think women learn to say no to and push back. The third thing is that they also realize that how can you co-opt other members of the family to also pitch in with the things that are required to be done at home, which was earlier considered only something that your help would do or the women would do. Now they learn to get other people in the home, whether it was children, your partner, your husband, whatever, to also pitch in. So those were the kind of coping mechanisms that women learned, or learned through evolving in their roles as both caregiver, as mother, and as a professional.
Nice. So I would definitely want Suzanne to add further to it and what she thinks on this.
yeah, thanks. I think, of course, Meera has spelled it out. And what we have seen actually, as women leaders who has a very high proportion of women in our team, for us, it was always something that we were very mindful of. And we also had different kinds of women. I mean, we had two women who had just delivered, and, I think they had taken a 3 or 4 months or 6 months leave, and they also came back. And I used to have a lot of challenges when I used to hear them saying that, my child sleeps at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's difficult to get onto a call. So I think it goes back to the same thing, that, the whole empathy that we could bring out, and that really worked very well, because we also sensitized our men folk that, if you're working as a team and there are some challenges like this, how do you collaborate? And we actually did this as a program continuously. So we had to bring in a lot more of external facilitation, got our HR involved in it and didn't make it as a bigger issue with people who are not able to kind of manage on timelines, specifically because of certain things at home. And we all know that the initial period of COVID was really bad when you didn't have your maids coming in and you were literally, cleaning the rooms together, washing your vessels, doing all the household work, all those unpaid labor that we all tend to get. And it's no different in India, right? We all had that work to be done. But one of the interesting things that also happened was men started participating more. And we just talked about it sometime back that a lot of men who possibly could see the need to kind of pitch in, while of course, they must have not done as much as the women folk wanted, but they were there. And that was also one of the...
No, Susan, I don't agree. Personally, I can talk a lot more on this. Anyway, carry on, please.
I think I hit a raw nerve. Sorry.
No worries. Carry on, please.
But I'm just speaking, after speaking to many of our colleagues, of course, I used to see this kind of a little bit of irritation coming across that, he can just shut himself into a room and talk, and I can't do the same thing. So I have to manage with this toddler walking in, mommy. So all these things have happened, I think we saw a lot of genuineness in people's life. I mean, what their life really was, right? It was all about an office and a facade of seeing them. And you knew a few people closely, but you never knew your entire office that well. And to me, it was such a huge eye-opener, because the same issues that you go through, a whole lot of people around you go, and it got us bonding better. And in terms of work life, I think on one side, when a lot of people, especially in Mumbai city, we spend a lot of hours traveling, whether it's on the road, whether it's on the trains. People were using that time to make up a lot of things. So that helped. And like Meera rightly said, technology actually helped to become a game changer. So better planning, more organizational skills, being on time, trying to close meetings faster. So a lot of discipline started coming in. So if you see, it's worked very favorably at many levels. But yes, it also, of course, got a lot of women worked up, because sometimes long hours stretching into meal times. And I have myself done it, my meeting was going on and there is a tadka going on because I had to give the food on time, or, you have your elderly parents at home who now think that now that there is no maid, you are the only person who can do everything for them. So it's a pull and push. But I guess we've learned to work around it. People have learned to, find time. And another big fallout was also children started helping a lot more. So in the house, I think it's been a sum total of many good things which have come out of it. But yes, it was a challenge at some point, but I think the year has passed out and people are still feeling that, okay, this is going to be the norm. And this is what even the study threw up, that a lot of women still feel that work from home will continue to be. And that's why they are now finding a lot more newer methods of coping. And that's where the whole health and wellness started coming in. People started giving time for yoga, time for exercise, time for a walk, And I think that's really what has been the plus side.
Just on a very, Amit, can I just add something on a very informal basis to what, what Meera and, have kind of shared. So I kind of represent, media and entertainment industry, and I kind of work on a genre called news. So while, everything shut down, news never kind of shuts down. So therefore, while the pandemic was very much, there for everybody, I can tell you, I only had 6 weeks of the lockdown curfew, which probably the government had implemented, which nobody could kind of escape. And post that, life was as usual, coming to the office. Obviously, we had the option to kind of work from home and also come to the office, but it so happens, so as as a woman, probably there are many more, who have probably had to step out, irrespective of what, because of the, the reasons for, the kind of work that they were doing, and yet kind of, had to contribute at home, because you did have maids, who were not there. You had condo, restrictions where, you could not get in the part-timers, they were going away to their villages, all of that. So yes, so you could not escape that. So you had to kind of balance between walking out of the house, going to work, and probably coming back and contributing and adding on, helping at home too, because that was required. But one thing which really, and I really endorse that, which came about, was that, which I think was the huge benefit was that, the family became extremely sensitized. So where you had children probably who were not used to kind of contributing and helping in the house, suddenly became very sensitized to the fact, and there's huge pressure. I mean, I know that my kids were on, on the social network wherein people were sharing the fact what all they were doing differently than what they were doing earlier and how they were helping, their parents and contributing. And I think that really kind of brought about a huge change, and helped women like us to kind of, really manage the work-life balance.
So Mona, I can empathize with what you said because I actually had only about 5 or 6 weeks of being at home. The rest of the time I was back in office, and I continue to be. So this whole work from home thing is a little bit alien as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I am reading, getting on some words like empathy, being more democratized, more punctual, more better behavior. So it sums up to ask me a question to say, Meera, do you think that for whatever experience you have had for work from home, did you realize that surroundings have become more cohesive, both on the professional front and personal surroundings?
Could you repeat that, Amit?
I'm saying suddenly whatever pandemic brought the situation, we are at home, and then you are at home not only as a wife or sis or mom, you have been exhibiting your professional duties from the home. So you had your office and home together.
Yes.
Did you observe that the surroundings have become more understanding, more cohesive towards you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think that was something that both Susan and Mona also reaffirmed when they said that, it was a scenario when everybody else also pitched in because, there was a realization and, and a timely one at that everybody needs to share in the workload. And it had to be, if not equitable, but at least there was a fair share that was being carried out by others. And the other experience was that I would like to share is that having been, all the time working from office mostly, and this was a time during the lockdown, which gave me a time to actually connect better with people at home, the whole bonding thing, and which gave me an added dimension from being just a professional to actually looking at other aspects of the home and relating to it and deriving a great deal of joy from the, be it gardening or, those are things that I never looked at or even ever thought of. And these were new aspects of life at home, which I could actually develop and enjoy. Apart from the whole aspect of being pressured as a homemaker and as a professional, but it did give me, there was time that one could take out to actually indulge in, at least one hobby or whatever you choose to call it. And of course, the bonding was the greatest plus.
Vaishali, what do you have to say on this?
On mute.
Vaishali, now you're on mute.
Yes, sorry. I would say that actually, we belong to a small strata of society. Nowadays, I call ourselves small because I can't say that it would have been such a wonderful experience even on the home front and relationship front for many women in the country. So if you go across strata, you go across geographies, you go across demographics, a lot of women were challenged. I think the pressure, of course, one positive note is that, a lot of men did do something. It is like, earlier, if they didn't even lift a plate and put it back in the kitchen, they did do that. They did lay the table, or some of them even attempted cooking and doing some of the other chores. But the stress on women was huge. The responsibility across strata of actually managing everything, being responsible for how the home would run, how her office was run. And if you go down to prop strata, a lot of men had lost their jobs as well. And, that put a lot of stress on women in the lower strata of society because they had to, some of them, as soon as there was a possibility of started a little bit when opening up happened. They were also the ones who had to go out and actually, try and earn some money. So there is always a flip side to it. It wasn't such a rosy picture for women everywhere across. So I would actually say that relationships came under stress. I mean, even across. So, living in with, I've heard many women complain that living in 24/7 for 2 to 3, 4 months, you're in each other's space, you're like, working from home, living with each other, arguments about what you need to do, what you don't need to do. So the relationships also came under a bit of stress at some point. I'm sure that, a lot of them let that ride rose above that, but there were these flip sides of where women were under a lot of stress during this time. So I won't deny that, and I would probably say that some of us are a privileged few, and we do have very understanding children and partners and in-laws or parents. But for a lot of people, the expectation was that women will continue to manage everything at home.
Yeah, just to add, Vaishali, I've just, for instance, when men do something which is like, working at home, it's like, wow, what a good husband you have, who's helping you out. But women have to do it any which way, it's okay. Amit, I hope you're hearing.
No,
I'm hearing loud and clear, Mona.
I'm completely in agreement with you, because when you said something, Mona, it's like when men do a little, they get a lot of praise. But women take it for granted that they're going to manage the kids, they're going to look at what they're going to, washing and cooking and actually even be responsible for disseminating. So even the fact that you have to disseminate responsibility to the rest of the family members becomes a chore,
Absolutely.
Completely outnumbered, but loving it. Thank you. Mona and Meera had been exceptions to say that they have not had much of the work from home. So my next question is good to Deepa. Though you have done, Deepa, the research, okay? What do you think, Deepa, that organizations will include work from home options for employees? How does that typically affect women?
I think so. But it's not going to be even. A lot of organizations, let's say even like my own, we were already used to working with everything in the cloud, right? So, and everyone had laptops. There was no challenges of sort of logistically trying to provide people with the infrastructure to start moving. It took us one day to get people to start working from home. But I know from many of our clients, it took them 3 to 4 months to procure laptops in that lockdown, get the system set up. Even especially, if you look at the banking and financial industry, they really struggle because all the systems were built about keeping data secure in this one space, right? So suddenly having to be far more spread out, it took some challenges in systems and processes to be built. I think it's going to be a mix. I think many organizations are finding that overhead costs have reduced. And I sound very cynical when I say this, but honestly, I think it's for the first time that women's interest, employee interest, and corporate interest are aligning and helping in some amount of cost saving. And only because of that, I do genuinely believe that it may become a more flexible work kind of a future. I don't think we'll any more lose candidates because, they shifted cities or they can't come into work every day or they live really far away. I do feel like there will be a far more flexible future available, at least for some of us more privileged white collar workers, I guess.
Let me just make a question on this to all the 4 leaders I have with me here. Work from home, yes, no?
Hybrid.
I would say balance, Amit, our balance of it. I definitely would not want to be working from home all the time because, it does kind of, I had many points. It does kind of, and we saw from Deepa research also, it does at times kind of hamper the quality of work that you're doing. You are distracted, and you need to, you're encroaching into somebody's space also probably, who's kind of there at home. The kids need to be a little bit more, given their space. So I think women also need to kind of be going out and working in an environment which is more productive and more, so therefore I would say the balance of it. So work from home should be flexibility of being able to have a choice to kind of work from home and being able to also kind of step out and kind of go to office work.
Yeah.
I
I
totally
would
agree
also
with that.
second this
Yeah.
hybrid
People,
model works a
the
lot.
hybrid model is what works. And to add to the point that Mona made, I would also say that human interaction, interacting with your colleagues and teams, and the whole physicality of it, ideation, that a lot of the times it can you can miss out on in the virtual world, or if you're constantly just connecting on Teams and or Zoom or whatever. So I think it is important that some element of work from office is comes back or is a part of the new normal. So I definitely believe that a hybrid model is what works best.
Uh,
Great.
I
Yeah.
think it would be a hybrid model, Amit. And I think one of the significant things that organizations would learn to do is, I think, the aspect of trust and conscientiousness. I think that's come in very much because of the pandemic. A lot of organizations, I'm not saying everyone, I mean, is like that, but there's always that suspicion whether people are putting in their best if they're working from home or not. But I think the pandemic taught us to trust people. We had no choice. And I think that trust going forward is something we should continue to retain and believe that people will be conscientious and therefore look at a model which is probably hybrid. And even if it is for it all depends on the industry. If you really ask me, there will be some industries, there are a lot of service industries, a lot of creative fields, ours as such, which is media and entertainment, where there is a need to sort of interact more with people. So it will depend on the industry in which you belong. But I also think that from perspective of a little bit of flexibility for people, I think that is a culture which is new in India. So, in my past life, in the professional past life, when I've worked with international organizations, the concept of work from home was not alien. So there were times when people said, for this week, 2 days in a week, I'm going to be working from home, and it was work done and achieved. But for us, it was a very alien concept here in India. But I think that is something we will learn to include, I mean, as and when the need is required. So I don't think it's going to be either this or that. It won't be totally work from home, or it won't be, we will also be, I mean, flexible to people saying that, I need to work from home so many days a week or month or whatever that may be. And I think that is something that we will probably learn to imbibe as we go along. And not to forget,
I
Amit,
think
yesterday we were talking, I think one of the space, I think the aspect that really benefited was the universe. In the work from home, we had pollution levels coming down.
Yeah.
We had the environment being much more greener and fresher. So I think, I don't know about people, but definitely the environment is going to definitely benefit from work from home.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
just wanted to add one more thing here. While of course it's a very interesting idea of putting this hybrid model, but we just experimented with something like this, and it's extremely important to orchestrate this whole thing, because when part of people work from home and part are in the office, it just sometimes become a mayhem, because if you're expecting to start everything at 9:30 and then you have people still traveling because they're traveling on the road and reaching office, you just cannot start everything in the same time the way it was. So we really realized that it's so important to plan this extremely well, because then a lot of it can fall in place. Otherwise it can be extremely chaotic by just leaving it highly flexible, where choices are just made by the employees, but it needs to be managed. And that's what our learning has been, and it does make, and I completely agree with what Vaishali just mentioned, that a lot of the benefit of this is also on what has happened in the environment and from where people can work. I mean, people were in cubby holes inside, especially in city like Mumbai, where you have just smaller houses and maybe some more families living together. They could now start living anywhere and start working better. So it's just a yin and yang that we need to follow and orchestrate it much better than what it.
Great. I think we can go on to talk on this, but looking at the time now, think we need to.
Can I just add one food for thought? I'm sorry taking this time because this is something which is very close to my heart. And I just thought, and this is a topic of pandemic.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
we keep talking about the impact of pandemic on working women, how they're going to kind of manage, the work and, their personal life balance. But think of the homemaker at home, She has a husband who was leaving home in the morning and coming back in the evening, and she had time to herself where she was, she was a queen of the house and she had the power and she was kind of managing everything else. So she was really, the CEO of her house. And now you have a husband, and you know how the male are, dominating and wanting to kind of, get into her space. So that's the other, Deepa, I think, since you're doing research, I think it's very, very important to delve into and look at their side of the story also, and how it's impacting their life and, and mental and physical health. I think there's going to be, it's a huge impact in that particular, and there are majority of women actually belong to that particular group, than this one.
And Mona, not to miss the kitty parties and the other activities. Because they have a very different life. And I hear it that I just hate it, the way it's happening.
So sorry, I just took them. This is extremely close to my heart, kind of a topic. And
no, Mona. It was good to hear you. But what I'm thinking is, away from us, there are some 50 odd participants I can see here. I hope some of them are men here. So guys, you have heard something to learn from the ladies. So I know I'm not kidding around. Definitely, what we heard, there's a lot to learn from you guys for sure. And I think let's continue, all of you in your leadership roles, let's continue to aspire and inspire the society more and more to include women in all walks of life. I can profoundly say that we men sure have a lot to learn from you, all of you, for sure. Before I end, I have some words, if I'm allowed to just express myself in Hindi. Some beautiful words by a lady on a woman. May I please?
Yes, please.
You have a permission.
Great. Thank you so much. I said, no, I'm outnumbered here. So it goes like this. जननी हूं, जीवन भी मैं, जज्बातों पे मेरा जोर नहीं, सशक्त हूं, साकार भी हूं मैं, नारी हूं, कमजोर नहीं, दर्पण हूं, व अक्स भी मैं, दर्पण means mirror and अक्स means shadow, दर्पण हूं, व अक्स भी मैं, झुका सके मुझे वो शख्स नहीं, स्वाभिमानी हूं, आत्मनिर्भर भी मैं, टूट के बिखरूं अब वो वक्त नहीं समझना आधी अधूरी, नहीं अधूरी मैं खुद पूरी, साथ चलना हो तो हाथ बढ़ाना, पीछे हटना मुझे मंजूर नहीं. That's it from my side. I'll end by saying that the future is definitely female and wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you very much, Amit.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Over to the organizers, please.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.